Would you sacrifice your own grandfather to save 100 families? Adam Mitchell's hands trembled as he gripped the courthouse door. Inside, his grandfather sat waiting. The man who taught him to fish was also the man who stole people's life savings. At 16, Adam was about to shatter his family forever. But sometimes doing what's right means breaking your own heart. The towering steps of Jefferson County Courthouse gleamed under the crisp morning light. Marble columns stretched toward the sky, their shadows painting stark lines across the manicured lawn where dew still sparkled. Through the massive glass doors, the bustle of morning activity echoed off polished floors. Among the morning crowd, 16-year-old Adam Mitchell stood out in his freshly pressed suit, one hand constantly fidgeting with his collar. His usual confident stride was replaced by uncertain steps, each one bringing him closer to Courtroom B, where everything would change. His grandfather, Robert Mitchell, had built the Hope Foundation from nothing 20 years ago. The papers called him a hometown hero, the man who helped fund college dreams and supported struggling families. His portrait hung in the community center, that signature warm smile beaming down at visitors. The same smile Adam had grown up trusting. But last Tuesday changed everything. While helping organize the foundation's annual charity drive, Adam had knocked over a filing cabinet. As papers scattered across the floor, numbers caught his eye that didn't add up. Mom always said he had a head for math, but these figures weren't just wrong, they were impossible. Donation records showed millions flowing in, but the foundation's books told a different story. Where had all that money really gone? The answer sat in his backpack now. Photocopies of documents that felt heavier than any textbook he'd ever carried. His grandfather's perfect signature marked each page, each one a betrayal of the community's trust. The heavy courtroom doors groaned open, drawing all eyes to Adam. The room split like the Red Sea. Left side filled with his family, right side packed with foundation donors. His Aunt Sarah turned away, lips pressed tight. Uncle Mike stared at his shoes. But his cousins Jenny and Kyle shot him small, secret thumbs up from the back row. "Remember who you are," his mother whispered, squeezing his hand, before he walked to the witness stand. Her green eyes shone with a mix of pride and pain. She'd raised him alone after Dad passed, taught him to always choose right over easy. Now that lesson would cost them both. The wood creaked under Adam's feet as he climbed into the witness box. His heart hammered against his ribs, but when he looked up, something strange happened. There sat his grandfather, silver hair neatly combed, wearing his lucky pinstripe suit, and he was smiling, not his usual warm grin, but something different, something that made Adam's spine tingle. Why would a man about to face serious fraud charges look so confident? The documents in Adam's backpack told a clear story of missing millions. But as his grandfather's eyes locked with his, a chill ran through him. What if there was more to this story than he knew? What if he'd only seen exactly what someone wanted him to see? "Please state what you found in the foundation records," the prosecutor asked, her voice gentle but firm. Adam took a deep breath, his mind racing back to that Tuesday afternoon. The courtroom faded around him as the memory took over. He'd been organizing donor files in his grandfather's office, the late afternoon sun streaming through Venetian blinds. The filing cabinet had tipped, papers spilling everywhere. That's when he noticed it. 2 different ledgers for the same donation period. One showed a $2 million grant to Riverside Community College. The other revealed only $200,000 had been sent. Back in the present, Adam's voice shook as he explained each discovery. His Uncle Mike's face turned red with each word. Aunt Sarah dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Through the gallery, people leaned forward, hanging on every detail as 9 years of careful fraud came to light. The scholarship fund for low-income students showed $5 million in donations, Adam continued, his finger tracing the photocopied numbers. But only $500,000 ever reached those families. He glanced at the right side of the courtroom where Mrs. Peterson sat, the lunch lady who'd lost her retirement savings. Her grandson would never go to college now. If you're still watching, you're a legend. Please like the video and leave a beautiful comment. But something wasn't adding up. Each time Adam mentioned a missing amount, his grandfather's smile grew wider. The man who'd taught him to always double-check his math didn't look worried at all. What secrets still lay buried in those numbers? What would you do if you discovered your own family's darkest truth was only the beginning? The prosecutor held up a small black device, barely bigger than a thumb drive. Your Honor, we'd like to submit new evidence. Adam's grandfather suddenly sat straighter, his smile vanishing for the first time. These are audio recordings, she continued, found in Mr. Mitchell's private safe. The bailiff connected the device to the courtroom speakers. A familiar voice filled the room, his grandfather's, but different, tired, worried. Day 847 of tracking the board's activities, the recording crackled. They're moving money again, offshore accounts, shell companies. I'm documenting everything, but they're watching me too closely. Have to play along until I can prove it all. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Aunt Sarah dropped her purse. Uncle Mike stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. Adam's mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. More recordings played. Names of real criminals emerged, board members who'd used the foundation as their personal piggy bank. His grandfather's voice detailed each transaction, each threat they'd made against him. But why had he played along? Why not expose them sooner? Adam stared at his grandfather, who now watched him with eyes full of something new. Hope. The smile returned, smaller this time, sad but proud. What other secrets was this man protecting? And more importantly, who else knew the truth? The defense attorney rose slowly, straightening his tie. Mr. Mitchell, did you ever wonder where some of the missing money went? His question hung in the air as Adam shook his head, confusion creeping across his face. Evidence flashed across the courtroom screen. Secret bank transfers, but not to offshore accounts, to small local charities, homeless shelters, food banks, medical bills paid anonymously for struggling families, each transaction carefully hidden within the fraudulent records. Your grandfather created a shadow network, the attorney explained. Money redirected from the corrupt board schemes, sent to people who needed it most, people the board had rejected for help. Files appeared showing the board's denials stamped in angry red letters, followed by mysterious donations that arrived just in time. A photograph appeared. Sarah Chen, age 8, smiling in a hospital bed. The board denied her cancer treatment funding, the attorney continued, but someone paid the full amount anonymously the next day. More photos followed, more stories, more lives saved by money that had disappeared. Adam's chest tightened as memories flooded back. The late nights he'd spotted his grandfather in his office, hunched over papers. The mysterious phone calls. The way he'd aged so quickly over the past few years, carrying a burden no one else could see. Mrs. Peterson stood up in the gallery, her voice shaking. He paid for Tommy's first semester, she revealed. After the foundation rejected our application. I never knew. Others joined in, pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. Behind every missing dollar lay a secret act of kindness. Adam turned to his grandfather, seeing him with new eyes. The man who'd taught him about right and wrong had been walking a tightrope between the two, fighting corruption from within, breaking laws to serve justice, playing the villain to be a hidden hero. But questions still burned. Why not expose the board's corruption immediately? Why risk everything, including his own grandson's trust? The answer sat in a final folder the attorney held. Death threats, not against his grandfather, but against his family, the board's insurance policy. Tears rolled down Adam's cheeks as the weight of it all crashed over him. His grandfather had sacrificed everything: his reputation, his relationship with his family, even his grandson's faith in him, to protect them all. How could someone carry such a burden alone? How could a single heart hold so much love and pain at once? The courtroom fell silent, every person wrestling with a truth too complex for simple judgment. Right and wrong had blurred, leaving only the raw human heart beating at the center of it all. Adam's hands trembled as he realized that sometimes the greatest acts of courage wear masks we mistake for cowardice. 12 faces in the jury box showed the battle raging in each mind. A middle-aged woman wiped tears from behind her glasses. A young man in a blue suit kept looking between Adam and his grandfather, shaking his head slowly. The evidence had painted a picture no one expected. The courtroom had transformed. Where once a clear line divided family and victims, people now mingled, sharing stories in hushed voices. "Remember when an anonymous donor paid for the children's library?" the town librarian whispered. "That was him." More stories emerged, like pieces of a hidden tapestry finally brought to light. Uncle Mike crossed the aisle, standing tall before Robert Mitchell. "Why didn't you tell us, Dad? We could have helped." His voice cracked. Aunt Sarah joined him, gripping her father's hand for the first time since the trial began. Even Adam's cousins moved closer, their earlier secret support now displayed proudly. But others remained torn. The foundation board members under investigation glared from their seats, phones buzzing constantly with news of frozen assets and pending investigations. The judge had already issued orders to trace every transaction, revealing a web that stretched far beyond their small town. Mrs. Peterson approached Adam at the witness stand. "Your grandfather saved my grandson's future," she said softly. "But he also broke laws meant to protect people like us. How do we judge that?" Her question echoed what everyone felt, the complex tangle of right and wrong that no simple verdict could unravel. The prosecutor and defense attorney huddled with the judge, papers shuffling between them. Each whispered conversation, each nod or frown from the bench sent ripples of tension through the room. Everyone knew that tomorrow's verdict wouldn't just decide one man's fate. It would define what justice means when good people make hard choices for the right reasons. Adam watched his grandfather, who sat straighter now, as if the weight of his secret had finally lifted. The familiar twinkle returned to his eyes, not of mischief this time, but of peace. Whatever came next, the truth had finally broken free. But would the law show mercy to a man who had broken it while trying to fix a broken system? The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. "Court will resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. for the verdict." People stood slowly, reluctant to leave with so much hanging in the balance. Outside, camera crews waited to broadcast the story of a small-town charity that had become a battlefield of ethics and justice. Adam felt a hand on his shoulder, his mother's. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "he taught you the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes doing good means walking through fire." The courthouse steps loomed ahead, where tomorrow they would all learn if the law could see the heart behind the crime. The verdict transformed everything. Robert Mitchell would help build a new oversight committee, using his insider knowledge to protect the foundation's future. No prison time, but a chance to make things right. Adam stood with his grandfather on the courthouse steps. Their shadows merged into one. "I did what you taught me," Adam said quietly, "to stand for truth." Robert's proud smile said everything words couldn't. The community rallied around them, led by Mrs. Peterson's plan to rebuild the foundation stronger than before. Old divisions faded as people shared stories of secret kindnesses, proving that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest healing. In the end, this wasn't just about right and wrong. It was about the courage to face truth and the power of family to overcome anything. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us that even in our darkest moments, love and truth can light the way forward.